After years of dismissing Anakin's emotional struggles, the Jedi Council finally acknowledges the deep trauma haunting their chosen one. Yoda senses a darkness growing, not from evil, but from unhealed pain. For the first time in generations, the Order assigns a Jedi healer to help Anakin confront his demons before it's too late. The war raged across the galaxy, but inside the Jedi Temple, a different battle was brewing. Anakin Skywalker stood before the Council, fists clenched, eyes dark with sleepless nights. He'd just returned from another brutal campaign on the Outer Rim. The missions were getting harder, the nightmares worse. Master Yoda watched him carefully. For months, the ancient Jedi had sensed something shifting in Anakin, a fracture in the Force, widening like a canyon. It wasn't the dark side, not yet. It was something more dangerous, unhealed wounds festering beneath the surface. "Anakin," Yoda said softly, his voice cutting through the silence. "Troubled you are." Anakin's jaw tightened. "I'm fine, Master. Just tired." But Yoda wasn't fooled. None of them were. Mace Windu exchanged a glance with Obi-Wan. They'd all seen the signs, the anger, the fear, the recklessness on the battlefield. Anakin was spiraling, and the Council had ignored it for far too long. "You are not fine," Mace said firmly. "And we've been blind to it." For the first time, the Council didn't lecture Anakin about letting go of his emotions. They didn't recite the Jedi Code, or tell him to meditate harder. Instead, Yoda made a decision that would change everything. "A healer we will assign to you," Yoda announced. "Master Silgal, expert in trauma, in the mind's wounds. With her, you will work." Anakin blinked, stunned. "A healer? I don't need." "You do," Obi-Wan interrupted gently, stepping forward. His voice was soft but resolute. "Anakin, you've carried the weight of the galaxy on your shoulders since you were a child. You lost your mother. You've seen friends die. You're married in secret, living in fear every day. That's too much for anyone." Anakin looked away, his throat tight. He wanted to argue, to insist he could handle it. But deep down, he knew they were right. The fear, the rage, the nightmares of losing Padme, they were eating him alive. Yoda's ears drooped with compassion. "Strong you are, Anakin, but strength alone not enough. Heal your heart, you must, before the darkness finds its way in." Anakin took a shaky breath and nodded. Master Silgal was summoned. The sessions would begin immediately, and for the first time in years, Anakin Skywalker felt a flicker of hope. Under Master Silgal's guidance, Anakin begins the painful process of facing his deepest fears, the terror of losing those he loves. In private sessions, he relives the trauma of his mother's death and admits the suffocating fear he carries for Padme. Slowly, he learns that love and loss are not enemies, but part of life itself. The healing sessions weren't easy. Master Silgal, a Mon Calamari Jedi with deep, knowing eyes, didn't push Anakin to meditate or recite mantras. Instead, she simply asked him to talk, to remember, to feel. "Tell me about your mother," she said during their third session. Anakin's hands trembled. He hadn't spoken about Shmi in years, not really. It was too painful, too raw. But Silgal waited patiently, her presence calm and steady. I was too late," Anakin whispered, his voice breaking. "I felt her suffering across the galaxy, and I couldn't get to her in time. I held her in my arms, and she died." Tears streamed down his face. "I swore I'd never let that happen again. Never." Silgal leaned forward. "And that's why you're so afraid for Padme." Anakin's breath hitched. He'd never said it out loud, but Silgal knew. She saw through him. "I can't lose her," Anakin said desperately. "I can't. I'd do anything to keep her safe. Even fall to darkness?" Silgal asked gently. The question hung in the air like a blade. Anakin froze. He wanted to say no, but he wasn't sure. If it came down to saving Padme or staying in the light, what would he choose? Silgal's voice softened. "Anakin, love is not your weakness. It's your strength. But fear is the poison. It twists love into obsession, into control. You're so afraid of losing Padme that you're clinging to her like a man drowning." "I just want to protect her," Anakin choked out. "But you cannot control life and death," Silgal said. "No one can. Not even the chosen one." Anakin's chest tightened. He hated hearing it, but it was true. He'd been living in constant terror, haunted by visions of Padme dying, replaying his mother's death over and over in his mind. Silgal placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You must learn to let go, not of love, but of fear. to trust that Padme is strong, that the future is not set. That love does not mean possession. For weeks, they worked through it. Anakin revisited his memories, his nightmares, his guilt. It was excruciating, but slowly something began to shift. He started to see the difference between love and fear, between protecting someone and suffocating them. One evening, after a particularly difficult session, Anakin sat alone in his quarters, staring at a holopic of Padme. He whispered to himself, testing the words, "I love you, but I cannot control your fate." It hurt, but it also felt freeing. For the first time since his mother's death, Anakin Skywalker began to breathe again. Chapter 3. Padme and Anakin build a healthier, open relationship. Chapter summary. With newfound clarity, Anakin finally opens up to Padme about his therapy sessions and his fears. Instead of hiding his struggles, he shares them. Padme, relieved and grateful, does the same. Together, they begin building a relationship based on honesty, trust, and mutual support, no longer trapped in secrecy and fear. Anakin had always kept secrets from Padme, not because he didn't trust her, but because he thought he had to be strong, perfect, unbreakable. He was the chosen one, the hero with no fear. How could he admit he was terrified? But after weeks of therapy, Anakin realized something. Hiding his pain wasn't protecting Padme. It was isolating her. So one night, in their private apartment on Coruscant, Anakin sat beside her on the couch and told her everything. "I've been seeing a Jedi healer," he began, his voice quiet. "Master Silgal. The Council, they noticed I was struggling. And they were right." Padme's eyes widened with surprise and relief. "Anakin, I've been carrying so much fear," he continued, his hands shaking slightly. "Fear of losing you. Fear of failing. I've been having nightmares, visions of you dying, and it's been consuming me. I thought if I could just be strong enough, if I could control everything, I could keep you safe." Tears welled in Padme's eyes. She reached out, taking his hand. "Oh, Anakin, I had no idea you were in so much pain. I didn't want you to know," he admitted. "I thought I had to carry it alone." Padme shook her head firmly. "No, you don't. We're in this together. Always." She took a deep breath, her own voice trembling. "I've been scared too, Anakin. Scared the Jedi would find out about us. Scared you'd be expelled from the Order. Scared that one day you'd leave for a mission and never come back." Her voice cracked. "I've been so terrified of losing you that I've been hiding how I feel too." Anakin pulled her close, his heart aching. They'd both been drowning in fear, alone, when they should have been leaning on each other. "No more secrets," Anakin whispered. "No more hiding. If we're going to do this, if we're going to build a life together, we do it honestly. We talk. We trust each other." Padme nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, no more secrets." From that night on, everything changed. They talked openly about their fears, their doubts, their hopes. Anakin told Padme about his therapy sessions. Padme shared her worries about the war, the Republic, and their future. They supported each other, not as hero and senator, but as equals. When Padme discovered she was pregnant, she didn't hide it. She told Anakin immediately, and together, they planned for their future, not in fear, but in hope. Anakin no longer felt like he was suffocating. He felt free, and for the first time he believed that maybe, just maybe, they could have a happy ending. But across the galaxy, a dark shadow was watching, and growing desperate. Chancellor Palpatine had spent years grooming Anakin, feeding his fears and planting seeds of distrust in the Jedi. But now, with a clearer mind and emotional stability, Anakin begins to notice the cracks in Palpatine's facade. The Chancellor's whispers of power and salvation no longer resonate. Instead, Anakin sees manipulation and realizes he's been a target all along. Palpatine had always been patient. For years, he'd carefully cultivated his relationship with Anakin Skywalker, planting doubts about the Jedi, stroking his ego, feeding his fears. The boy was powerful, vulnerable, and desperate, the perfect apprentice. But something had changed. "Anakin, my boy," Palpatine said warmly during one of their private meetings in his office. "You seem different lately, more at peace." Anakin smiled faintly. "I've been working through some things, Chancellor. The Council assigned me a healer. It's helped." Palpatine's smile didn't falter, but inside, alarm bells rang. A healer? That was a problem. A stable, emotionally healthy Anakin was far harder to manipulate. "I'm glad to hear it," Palpatine said smoothly. "Though I must say, I'm surprised the council took such an interest. They've always seemed so rigid, so quick to judge emotion as weakness. It was a carefully placed jab, a test to see if the old doubts still lingered. But Anakin didn't take the bait. "They're trying," Anakin said simply. "And so am I." Palpatine's eyes narrowed, just for a moment. He needed to regain control, fast. "Anakin," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I've always been honest with you. The Jedi, they don't trust you. They fear your power. But I see your potential. Together, we could bring true peace to the galaxy." It was the same speech Palpatine had been building toward for years. The promise of power, of recognition, of saving those he loved. But this time, Anakin heard something different. He heard manipulation. Anakin frowned, studying Palpatine's face. "Why do you always talk about the Jedi like they're the enemy?" Palpatine blinked, momentarily caught off guard. I only want what's best for you, Anakin." "Do you?" Anakin pressed, his voice calm but firm. "Or do you want something from me?" The air in the room shifted. Palpatine's smile tightened. "Anakin, I'm hurt you would even suggest. You've been whispering in my ear for years," Anakin interrupted, his eyes sharp. "Telling me the Jedi don't understand me. That they're holding me back. That I need more power." He stood up, his gaze unwavering. "But my healer asked me something. Who benefits from my fear?" Palpatine's expression flickered, just for a second, but Anakin saw it. "And I realized," Anakin continued quietly, "the only person who's ever benefited from my fear is you." Silence. Palpatine's mask slipped, just slightly. His eyes darkened. "Anakin," he said slowly, his voice colder now. "You're tired. Confused. The Jedi are clouding your mind." "No," Anakin said firmly. "For the first time, I'm thinking clearly." He turned and walked toward the door. Palpatine watched him go, his hands clenching into fists. The plan was falling apart, and he was running out of time. Anakin's suspicions grow stronger. After consulting with Obi-Wan and reviewing Palpatine's actions during the war, Anakin realizes the horrifying truth. The Chancellor has been orchestrating the conflict from both sides. Armed with evidence and a clear mind, Anakin does what he once couldn't. He goes to the Jedi Council and reveals that Palpatine is the Sith Lord they've been hunting. Anakin couldn't sleep that night. His conversation with Palpatine replayed in his mind over and over. The way the Chancellor's eyes had darkened, the cold edge in his voice, the carefully constructed mask slipping, just for a moment. It all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. The next morning, Anakin went straight to Obi-Wan. "Master," Anakin said urgently, "we need to talk. Privately." They met in a secluded meditation chamber. Anakin paced, his mind racing. I think Palpatine is the Sith Lord we've been looking for," Anakin said, his voice shaking. Obi-Wan's eyes widened. "Anakin, that's a serious accusation." "I know," Anakin interrupted. "But think about it. He's been pulling the strings from the beginning. He's prolonged the war, increased his own power, and played both sides. He's been manipulating me for years, Obi-Wan. Whispering doubts, feeding my fears, isolating me from the council." Obi-Wan's expression grew grim. "Go on." Anakin explained everything, the private meetings, the veiled criticisms of the Jedi, the promises of power, the way Palpatine always seemed to know too much. And then the final piece, the story Palpatine had once told him about Darth Plagueis the Wise, a Sith Lord who could manipulate life and death. "He was testing me," Anakin said, "seeing if I'd be tempted. And I almost was." Obi-Wan placed a hand on Anakin's shoulder. "But you weren't. You saw through it. And now, we must act." Together, they went to the council. The chamber fell silent as Anakin stood before the gathered masters. Yoda, Mace Windu, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, all of them listened intently as Anakin laid out his case. "I believe Chancellor Palpatine is Darth Sidious," Anakin said, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "He's been manipulating the war, consolidating power, and grooming me as his apprentice." Mace Windu's jaw tightened. "Do you have proof?" "Not physical evidence," Anakin admitted. "But I've pieced it together. The way he talks about the Sith, his knowledge of the dark side, his manipulation tactics. And a feeling in the Force. Something dark, lurking beneath his surface." Yoda closed his eyes, reaching out through the Force. For a long moment, the room was silent. Then Yoda's eyes snapped open. "Right, young Skywalker is," Yoda said gravely. "Clouded by the dark side, the Chancellor has been. Sense it now, I do." The council exchanged grim looks. This was it, the moment they'd been preparing for. Mace Windu rose to his feet. Then we move immediately. Anakin, you'll come with me. We'll confront Palpatine and take him into custody. For a brief moment, Anakin hesitated. This was the man who'd been his mentor, his friend, for so many years. But then he thought of Padme, of their unborn child, of the galaxy drowning in war. I'm ready, Anakin said. Mace nodded. Then let's end this. Chapter 6. Mace Windu and Anakin capture Palpatine together. Chapter summary. Mace Windu and Anakin, backed by Jedi Masters, storm Palpatine's office. The Chancellor drops his mask and unleashes the full fury of the dark side. In the original timeline, Anakin betrayed Mace, but now, with his mind clear and his loyalties firm, Anakin fights alongside the Jedi Master. Together, they bring down the Sith Lord and end the war. The confrontation came swiftly. Mace Windu, Anakin Skywalker, Kit Fisto, and Aegon Kohler marched into the Chancellor's office. Palpatine sat calmly behind his desk, his hands folded, his smile thin. Master Windu, Palpatine said smoothly. To what do I owe this visit? Chancellor Palpatine, Mace said coldly. You're under arrest for treason against the Republic and conspiracy with the Sith. Palpatine's smile vanished. Are you threatening me, Master Jedi? The Senate will decide your fate, Mace replied. Palpatine rose slowly, his voice dripping with venom. I am. The Senate. In a flash, he ignited a crimson lightsaber hidden in his sleeve and struck. Kit Fisto and Aegon Kohler fell within seconds, their reflexes no match for the Sith Lord's speed. Mace and Anakin barely raised their blades in time, blocking Palpatine's vicious strikes. Anakin! Palpatine shrieked, his face twisted with rage. Help me! The Jedi are taking over. They'll destroy everything you love. It was the same play Palpatine had always used, fear, desperation, manipulation. But this time, Anakin didn't waver. No, Anakin said firmly, his lightsaber blazing. You're the one who's been destroying everything. And it ends now. Palpatine's eyes widened with shock, then fury. Fool, he snarled. You could have had everything. Power. Immortality. The ability to save Padme. I don't need your power, Anakin shouted back. I have something stronger, trust. Love. The light. With a roar, Palpatine unleashed a torrent of Force lightning. Mace Windu raised his lightsaber, redirecting the energy back toward the Sith Lord. Anakin moved in tandem, his blade cutting through the lightning's arc. Together, they pressed forward. Palpatine fought like a cornered beast, his strikes wild and deadly. But he was outnumbered, and for the first time in decades, outmatched. Mace's blade slashed across Palpatine's hand, disarming him. Anakin's lightsaber swept low, cutting through the Sith Lord's leg. Palpatine collapsed with a scream, his face contorted in agony and disbelief. Mace stood over him, his lightsaber raised. It's over, Sidious. Palpatine glared up at them, hatred burning in his eyes. The dark side will always return. But not today, Anakin said quietly. Mace Windu's blade came down, and the Sith Lord was no more. The room fell silent. Anakin and Mace stood over Palpatine's body, breathing hard, their lightsabers still ignited. Outside, across the galaxy, the war began to crumble. Without Palpatine's commands, the Separatist droids powered down. The clone troopers, freed from Order 60's shadow, stood down. Anakin looked at Mace, exhaustion and relief flooding through him. It's done, Mace said quietly. The Sith are defeated. Anakin nodded, and for the first time in years, he felt truly free. With Palpatine dead and the war ended, the Jedi Order begins to heal and reform. Anakin's courage and clarity earn him the rank of Jedi Master, not through power or politics, but through wisdom and growth. He becomes a symbol of what the Order can be, compassionate, honest, and strong. The galaxy begins to rebuild, and Anakin finally finds peace. The war was over. Across the galaxy, clone troopers removed their helmets and laid down their weapons. Separatist worlds surrendered. The Senate, reeling from Palpatine's betrayal, began the slow process of restoring democracy. And in the Jedi Temple, the Council gathered once more. Anakin Skywalker stood before them, but this time, he wasn't being reprimanded. He wasn't being held back. He was being honored. Anakin Skywalker, Yoda said, his voice warm with pride, proven yourself, you have. Not just in battle, but in spirit. Faced your darkness, you did. Chose the light, you did. A true Jedi, you are. Mace Windu stepped forward, his expression softer than Anakin had ever seen. Anakin, you saved the Order. You saved the galaxy. And more than that, you saved yourself. He placed a hand on Anakin's shoulder. We grant you the rank of Master. Anakin's breath caught. For so long, he'd craved this recognition. But now, standing here, he realized something. The title didn't matter. What mattered was who he'd become. Thank you, Anakin said quietly. But I didn't do it alone. Master Silgal, Obi-Wan, Padme, they helped me see what I couldn't see on my own. Obi-Wan smiled proudly from the side of the chamber. That's what it means to be a Jedi, Anakin. We're stronger together. In the weeks that followed, the Jedi Order began to change. Anakin's story, his healing, his honesty, his redemption, inspired others to confront their own struggles. The Council started offering mental health support to all Jedi, recognizing that suppressing emotions wasn't strength, it was a recipe for disaster. Anakin himself became a teacher. He trained younglings, sharing not just combat techniques but lessons on balance, on compassion, on the courage to ask for help. And at home, Anakin embraced his new life. Padme gave birth to twins, Luke and Leia. The Jedi Council, recognizing the changing times, allowed Anakin to remain married and raise his children openly. One evening, Anakin stood on the balcony of their apartment, holding baby Luke in his arms while Leia slept in Padme's embrace. The sun set over Coruscant, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. I used to be so afraid, Anakin whispered to his son. Afraid of losing everything. But now, I know that love isn't about fear. It's about trust. About letting go. He looked down at Luke's tiny face, so peaceful, so full of potential. You're going to grow up in a better galaxy, Anakin promised. One where the Jedi protect without arrogance. Where people heal instead of hide. Where balance truly means balance. Padme smiled at him from the doorway. You did that, Anakin. You gave them hope. Anakin shook his head gently. No, we did that. Together. The Chosen One had fulfilled his destiny. Not through destruction, but through healing. And the galaxy was finally at peace. Years later, Anakin reflects on his journey, from a traumatized slave boy to a healed Jedi Master. He trained his children in the ways of the Force, rebuilt the Jedi Order with compassion, and proved that balance doesn't require sacrifice or suffering. The prophecy was fulfilled, not by destroying the Sith, but by choosing light, love, and healing. The galaxy remembers him not as Darth Vader, but as Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one who never fell. 15 years passed. The galaxy thrived. The Republic, rebuilt and reformed, stood stronger than ever. The Jedi Order, once rigid and dogmatic, had become a place of wisdom, compassion, and growth. And at its heart was Anakin Skywalker. Now a senior member of the Council, Anakin trained a new generation of Jedi, his own children among them. Luke and Leia, now teenagers, sparred in the temple courtyard under Anakin's watchful eye. Luke moved with grace and patience, while Leia fought with fierce determination and strategic brilliance. Anakin smiled, pride swelling in his chest. Your mother would be so proud, he murmured. Padme had stepped down from the Senate years ago, choosing instead to focus on galactic humanitarian efforts. Together, she and Anakin had built a life rooted in honesty, partnership, and love. Later that evening, the family gathered in the temple gardens. Obi-Wan joined them, older now but still sharp, still wise. Do you ever think about it? Obi-Wan asked quietly. What could have happened if you hadn't gone to therapy? If the council hadn't reached out? Anakin was silent for a long moment. Every day, he admitted. I see the edge I was standing on. How close I came to falling. He looked at his children, at Padme, at Obi-Wan. I would have lost everything. But you didn't. Obi-Wan said firmly. You chose differently. Anakin nodded. Because someone gave me a chance. Because I wasn't afraid to admit I needed help. Master Yoda, ancient and frail but still filled with light, shuffled over to join them. The prophecy fulfilled it was, but not as we expected. What do you mean? Luke asked curiously. Yoda's ears twitched with a knowing smile. Balance to the Force, Anakin brought. Not by destroying the Sith alone, but by healing himself. By showing the Jedi a new way. Compassion, honesty, love. These the true paths to balance are. Anakin looked out over the Coruscant skyline, the city glowing with life and hope. He thought of the boy he used to be, scared, angry, desperate. And he thought of the man he'd become, strong, healed, at peace. I used to think the prophecy meant I had to be perfect, Anakin said softly. That I had to save everyone, control everything. But I was wrong. Balance isn't about power. It's about choice. Choosing light over darkness. Choosing honesty over secrets. Choosing healing over fear. Padme took his hand, squeezing gently. And you made the right choice. Anakin smiled, his heart full. We all did. Years later, when historians wrote about the Clone Wars and the fall of the Sith, they told the story of Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one who brought balance not through violence but through courage, the Jedi who faced his demons and won. There was no Darth Vader, no empire, no genocide, just a man who chose to heal, and in doing so saved the galaxy. The Force was finally truly in balance, and Anakin Skywalker's legacy would endure forever, not as a warning, but as a beacon of hope.